and welcome back to another episode of V-Road, CCTCG's weekly Vanguard podcast. I'm Cole.
And I'm Trey.
And today we've got a pretty lax one, pretty chill, not too crazy, nothing serious, nothing too analytical, all those things. It's just kind of something you can vibe to and maybe relate to in some way, having what we like to call pet decks. And I've got like a really like broad definition of this, I guess. Um, so to me, when I think of a pet deck, I think of a deck that like either I know is bad, or at least like isn't very good as far as like your local meta is concerned. Something that you like show up with, just kind of like to like have fun in your own way with the game instead of like just trying to win. Um, or like a deck that like you really love just the idea of and what it wants to do, but it just hasn't been given the tools to like get all the way there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of those that we have. Well, we have a couple to talk about today, but I mean, everyone can kind of relate to this. They have that deck that they want to work so badly that they try different deck lists all the time, or just change it up to see if one card can be the difference, or throw in a random tech piece that's like, hey, if I get this card, it's actually like really good. I can get like a winner here, like that could be my win con type thing. So we have a couple fun ones lined up to talk about that we really enjoy talking like and playing at least.
Yeah, and you know, I don't think we'd ever take these to a tournament unless we had like a certified jank night, you know, something that
Oh, yeah.
we as something that we actually do once in a while.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so the first one I wanted to throw out there was probably the one I spent the least amount of time with, and it was kind of back when I still didn't really know what I wanted to do in Stoicheia, specifically, and it was Mushi King, the funny little bugs. Um, I I I picked them up mostly just cause like they were cheap for one. We opened so many packs of set 13 that like by the time we had opened what we needed from the set, we just had enough bugs to build a deck. And I tried it. It was cute for a couple games. It definitely made you feel super big brain to like have all these funny bugs that unironically didn't have skills on them, but then all of your like attacks you had to rest them and then they'd get the attack or whatever, and all these weird effects.
Yeah, it's one of those ones that I have over actually on my side here as a deck that I'm still kind of in the process of building. I haven't committed fully to it. I have it partially sleeved, but I'm still missing a few pieces. But it its core mechanics are interesting, that it like kind of tries to play more towards the actual arcade machine, um, and get away from Vanguard in the sense, but still be within Vanguard. So it creates a lot of, I feel like, headaches if you really don't know what you're looking at. Especially because when you look at the cards and you're like expecting to see like text that tells you what the cards do, but they don't. So having orders that are like your attacks and everything is very um kind of spellcrafty, I think, like in a sense where it's like when once you meet certain conditions, then you get to do it and you get to like activate the spell, and then that's when the attack hits. Is at least in my brain is how it kind of functions. I know that's not right since it's more like a fighting game, but that's how it goes in my head.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like they had like oh, are you the right type of bug, and then do you have a certain amount of power, and then are you this specific, or like is your bugs a finishing move this card, and then like each of those conditions gave you like an extra thing. I believe the way I ran it is I ran the red bug, the red grade 3 bug, because his finishing move let him restand with like two drive checks both times. Like it was crazy. It was kind of
Yeah.
weird that the fact that it was like at the end of the day it was just a like deck that it was like an overlord deck. It could just restand the Vanguard and that was it. But I remember it had a really silly guard restrict. I can't remember the specifics of it, but it was for like a grade 1 that you can like attack with, and it was just kind of silly. I like it. Like That's what I'm gonna say about all of my decks at least, and probably what you'll say about all yours. Just it was silly. Like you would you'd sit across from it and you have no idea what it does, and then I just tell you things, and you probably just have to take my word for it because like it's a lot to try to put together.
Yeah, it's one of those ones that you kind of preface to your opponent beforehand. Hey, look, this is Vanguard, but I'm not playing Vanguard with you right now. So just go with it. And
Yeah,
obviously,
I'm
you
playing
know,
Vanguard at you. You know.
yeah, yeah, at you, not with you, at you.
Yep.
For sure. So it's very interesting. It has a little bit of play mechanics from just about everything, which is nice for it being isolated to one set of 13, and it's not even in anything in Divine so far, which I doubt we'll see again. Um, I mean, who knows? I could be wrong about that, but it it actually has a lot of variety as to what you can get away with it because it has the whole rock paper scissors mechanic. Like, there's a lot of different combinations of things that you can kind of piecemeal together to do it. So it does create a little bit of inconsistency, but can play towards whatever style of fighting game you want. Essentially, like if
Yeah.
you want to be more disruptive or more overlord, or going back to our previous podcast, if you want to play an overlord, if you want to go control, if you want to go filter, you get all these different options of build styles that you can really do.
Yeah, it was crazy because like it was like so when you went up to grade 1, you got the arcade cab crest, and when you got that, you got to get 3 different attacks that were set into your order zone. That's basically kind of what crafted the like playstyle you were going for, because there were a lot, but you had to pick 3 different types, I believe. So what you did is you would just pick the one that worked with your grade 3 the best, and you could run like a couple different grade 3s for like your ride deck and all that. And to go along with that, it had a once per turn act to like soul blast one, look at the top 5, and you get like an attack card or just a bug, any bug, and you can just, I think you call it, or it goes to your hand or whatever. And that by itself gave you like a lot of deck filtering, weirdly enough, a lot of deck compression, and just it made it helped it be way less inconsistent than maybe it should be for what it was. So I think it's weird. Like it was one of the few one of the few really solid examples of like a collab deck in Vanguard, just being all around pretty all right. Like if you got into this because you liked the silly bugs, but you're not really a Vanguard player, like you actually won't have a bad time, surprisingly enough.
Yeah, just a silly little deck, as we'll continue
Yep.
to say.
All right, what do you got
um,
first?
my first one is actually going to be Etaglimma, the very fun what we call Batman.
Yep.
Um, he is not great. I mean, in reality, he has an on place effect on Vanguard. So like when he's placed, he can check the top 7, I think, and grab as
5.
many order. Or I think it's 5. Yeah, 5, even worse. Grab as many orders
Damn.
from it as you can and put them into the order zone, and then based off of how many different named orders in your order zone you have, you can restand a rear guard. If you have enough, you can restand your Vanguard, but then you put them all back to deck. So it's like everything that you did to filter the deck, you just disrupt and put back. So I run it with a very goofy build. I run the Putin Twisters, or the 3 maids and the 1 order that pretty much gives 2k to the front row. Um, it's not great, but it's fun, and it's fun having the little sisters because they're just generic Brant Gate cards that have like look for each other, and they kind of all build boards. So like if you get one and you get lucky and your search is on the top of the deck, you could really build a board out of it and have support, and they get some decent power. So it's not great, but it's fun.
Yeah, it's interesting because he himself has like no counterblast costs on him, and I know the Cleaning Sisters, they all have like a CB cost to check the top 5 for the order or a certainly named sister, and they
Yeah.
kind of help you build up that way. But yeah.
Yeah, I think the yellow-haired one looks for the blue-haired one, the blue-haired one looks for the pink one, and then all of them look for the order, except for the pink one. Pink one has a bunch of things it gets based off of how many of those set orders you have in your order zone. So I mean, you're getting them from hand, so you're putting them in there, and then as well as putting them in from the top of the deck. as well as Edelglim is a monster. So like I run it with the Archite PGs or Archite um, set order as well as the Craggy Beast PGs. So you can just keep on, getting monsters out. So you get personas and PGs out to kind of help you filter the deck again a little bit more, but as well as same thing, you're going to put orders back. So
Yeah,
it's a goofy little deck.
kind of interesting how open ended it is. It's weirdly just it honestly is like the most generic brain gate card, brain gate Vanguard at least.
Yeah.
So that's something, in a highly contextual nation. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a buddy of mine built a list where it was like 46 set orders, and only like that. So he didn't have any shield, but he was restanding his Vanguard every time. But it was like he ran like two ofs of everything, so it was like it was not great, but it was fun. I say 46. Obviously, there was triggers and things, but every other card in the deck was that, and it was just because why not? Fun.
Yeah. Yep.
A little deck.
Speaking of silly bad decks, we've got the funny grade 10 guy, Griffagilla. I remember around the time he came out, I built up the ride deck for him, and I slotted him into Brantgate because I didn't have much else. I had like just enough bulk to make a Brantgate version of this guy. And if you like don't know or need a refresher on him, he's like the only grade 10 in the game. He rides from like a 5-card ride deck where he starts as like the grade 0 and he puts calamity cards from the ride deck into his soul, and then once he gets to 3 of them he superior rides it. And he was like at the end of the day, he was like the antagonist deck for Will Dress season 3. And it was just weird. He had all the dragon tree markers. There was so much support in like every nation just for him, in the off chance you ran it with him, like the cards that search the masks, the cards that can only be placed on a dragon tree markers, but they were like 15k base or whatever, and they got like 1k for every dragon tree marker you had, and it was just silly. And the silliest thing about it was how it kind of had to bide its time until like turn 7 or turn 8, to where it would manually activate your over trigger of choice from whatever nation you were playing it in, and then stand everything on a dragon tree marker, which was actually very, very solid. Once you got there, you almost always won, but getting there was usually an issue.
Yeah. So this deck's always funny to me because it's the only deck, at least in my brain that I'm thinking of, that they portrayed as being really good in the anime, but did not translate to actual paper. Like when it was actually printed on cardboard and people were playing the decks, like if you happen to get to that turn 8, yeah, you might win the game because you are guaranteed pulling that OT. But it's getting to that turn 8 that you didn't get to very often. Like you had to be playing against Etaglimma to get there, type thing. Like it's a very fun deck because it is so open-ended where you can play it through any nation that you really want, because it has no nation, so it just kind of coexists everywhere. But it's tough.
Yeah, the issue I ran into it was like a couple things. Well, first, it kind of died before it got to its turn 8, or at least like its turn 6 or 7 or something. That got shored up with like a grade 0 blitz order it got, which is actually really solid and still pretty good. So I think it living to its turn 8, or to its kill turn, I guess, whatever that turn is, like, isn't actually super impossible. Depending on the nation you're in, you have some good defensive tools, and that blitz order itself is just kind of worth carrying your defensiveness on by itself. But like somehow the other issue it had is that it won games. It was bad because it won games, and what I mean by that is it would win before it even got to like turn 7 or turn 8. And the way it did that was you had all these dragon tree markers. They gave everything on at 5k, and he himself got 5k for all of your Dragon Tree markers, and he gave himself a crit as well. So he was just big, and all of your
Yeah.
columns were just big. And at the end of the day, that was all you needed to win a Vanguard game sometimes. Like, against decks that weren't quite meta, you could just kill them. You happen to hit triggers right here and there, and not even sacking that much, but just enough to have a tempo in your favor, even a little bit. It just
Yeah.
worked. It somehow worked. I don't know.
When and this was you gotta everyone if you are newer to Vanguard, you gotta remember this was pre-energy generator, so you didn't have that additional draw. You didn't have other resources to draw a lot of cards, and some of these decks just struggle. So that's obviously been shored up a little bit and better now. But yeah, some of these, I mean, decks that just used all of its resources like Chaos sometimes would just die because you didn't have enough cards in hand to like defend against the big attacks. So yes, its biggest downfall was also its greatest strength at the time. Currently, it doesn't have that effect because, well, first off, games do go longer. So it actually probably is better meta now than it was then for it in a sense. But also with the grade 11, it helps a little bit, but it's just there's a lot of other decks that you could run that are just essentially the same thing. It was the first kind of like teaser into like a divine skill turn in a sense. So if you we reference thing, we call them like mini divine skills and things like that, because they're just kind of like a one time effect that you can guarantee. But yeah,
Yeah.
silly little deck.
The only way I made this deck work personally, at least, was making a Dragon Empire variant where I ran Trick Stars, I ran of Arena Arcs that gave the deck a lot of draw power. Like drawing two was just crazy. Even if it was like a Trickstar and a Virina Arcs essentially was like a wash in terms of card advantage.
Mm-hmm.
It ended up at the very least it dug through your deck a bit more than it would have otherwise. And then the grade 4 Virina before that got super expensive. Like that card was so insane in this deck because you could restand it and get 5 attacks. So growing up to your over trigger turn, you usually had them at a pretty good spot.
Yeah, I mean, I have the pieces wherever I just move them to, right here for the deck, so I could start putting mine together. Because I want to build the Dragon Empire version because it is fun.
Yeah.
But I just haven't gotten to it. I just have to pull other pieces that I haven't done yet. So it keeps sitting here, and eventually will get built.
Yeah, well, maybe now we'll talk about a deck that is built.
Well, we could talk about 6 of them
Oh
because I
man.
have them built out. So, well, I guess 5. Sorry, quintuplets. There's 5. Let me correct myself. There's 6 nations. There's only 5 of them. Um, but we'll talk. Yeah, the quintessential quintuplets decks. It's kind of one of those decks. None of them are great, but they're all really fun. It kind of they kind of play a little bit like Arcade in a sense, where you want to have the different names quintessentials in your memory is what they call it instead of the order zone. It's just their terminology for it. So getting all those different cards in there is actually kind of a fun mechanic because it's a little bit of gambling and a little bit of setup. So you can kind of gamble your way into getting them by just top decking cards and putting them into your order zone, but also having the same effects of being able to um, just set up 2 in your drop, play in order, and then guarantee you putting 1 into your memory and 1 into deck. So it's super interesting because it's the only deck that I know of currently that you like have to run additional starters in it because you want to see 7 quintessential quintuplets, and there's 7 named quintessential cards in each nation's version of the deck. So you have to run at least 1 additional if you want to use the order to get the grade 0 up in there. But you really are just shooting for running like a full play set of the in the deck, so you can get it guaranteed up in there. So
It is kind of silly. I didn't think about that.
yeah,
I'm gonna be honest. I don't know what like what these decks do. I played against the Dark States or Brankade. I can't remember. I played against one of those. No, it was
The Brancate and the Dark States have been played
Mm,
at the shop. I know
yeah.
at our shop
I don't
for
remember which one it was, but I played against one of them, and it didn't do nothing, but it didn't
they
do a
don't
lot either.
definitely do nothing, but they definitely don't do a lot either.
Yeah.
For sure. Um currently my favorite one of them, and it's gross to say as a Dragon Empire player, it's actually the Keter Sanctuary one because it's the only deck in the game currently that just has the text "You win the game"
Yeah, only
on
deck
it.
in standard. That has it, yeah.
Standard. I should preface that, yeah, in standard. Obviously, there's G cards and things that do that, but we don't talk about that.
Damn. For
we
now,
we don't talk about currently. We don't
until
talk
the
about that.
inevitable
Yep.
G episode.
We'll get to those. But in standard, yeah, it's the only one that says you win the game off of its trigger, which I think it's 14 or more different, or 14 or more quintessentials in your memory, which isn't an easy task. But the best part about the deck is you build it to not do damage. Like your rear guards and everything, you're trying to swing at like rear guards and like you're bullying their board. And then in my version of it, I run the over trigger, which I just run whatever the nation is of it, um, as well as which I probably should change to yellow OT now that I think about it, but that's a different story. Um, run the 8 fronts and 8 draws. No heals, nothing else. Just goofy. Well, I say 8, 7 fronts, 8 draws. But essentially, you just want to filter the deck, get a bunch of cards to your hand, and you don't want to do damage to your opponent. So you don't give them counterblast. You don't give them resources to kind of play the game. And you just want to kind of play your own board and win the game that way. So as long as you just don't die, you eventually just win. It's in my opinion the biggest turtle deck, even more than Android.
Sure, yeah.
So
Makes sense.
of the quintessential quintuples, I have to say the Keter one's my favorite, which is dumb, but you know, Dragon Empire's up there.
Everybody gotta get one, I guess. Everybody gets one.
Nah, Keter pile. It's the only deck that you don't Keter pile.
Yeah, fair enough.
So maybe that's why I like it.
You know what? Honestly, fair. That's always a fair thing. I do lament how overpowering generics can be. Like I guess a small side thing is I appreciate how many generics are in the game now for each nation.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't think decks that can't fit generics in them because of what they want to do is so Piercer Line is like better, but they usually end up feeling more interesting. Like I don't know. Like all the Destin decks aren't exactly very generic friendly, but that's what kind of sets them apart a lot, I think. So
yeah, gonna be super easy to build in the sets that they come out, so it's kind of nice.
yeah, that's always a nice thing about them is you don't feel the need to have to get them if you don't have them already, which is nice.
Yep.
Speaking of generic things, the last one I've got is the Funny Kitty, Petrolka. So I remember reading this card when it was real like a year ago or something, and I was like, oh, okay, it's like a singleton deck. You at the end of battle, she attacks. You check the top 7 cards of your deck, and you can either call a rear guard from that top 7, or superior ride another copy of her if all the cards you revealed have different names, not counting her. So the idea was you kind of sculpt your starting hand to make sure you don't see any Persona Ride copies for as long as you can until you hit grade 3. You ideally want to take a lot of damage, maybe more than you should in other decks, and just use all of your CB trying to like kill your opponent on the first grade 3 turn, or maybe your first grade 4 turn, depending. Because then you can just do that effect over and over and get like 6 Vanguard swings and like three rear guard swings, and it's just kind of cute. It's just so silly. It's like the silliest deck to me. I don't know why, because it's the most high rolly I've seen a deck be in standard as far as like what it is as a concept. And it's just very generic as well. I think that's neat because there's not really a ton of a generic lyrical decks. They try really hard to make them all like super specific and set them apart from each other and what they want to do. But this one kind of, it's a generic in a good way. I'll say that.
Yeah, and it's kind of great because it is really the only true Highlander deck that we have in the game. Like, it has to see so many different generically named cards, like having different names. Um, Whereas like Chaos used to be that way, but now it's like so like optimized. Like, you have obviously you're running all of um your actual true supporting cards for the deck, Agamanath, all of your uh, blanking on the freaking names of them. That's killing me as a
Mikani.
Meganis. Yes,
There
thank
you
you. Obviously you've always kind of ran those, but like all of the supporting cards, like you still run all your triggers as kind of a menagerie of names. So you have all of them. Um, but a lot of the like supporting cards you're running like two or three of for the most part anymore. Even four ofs on some cards that are the same name, but you're just in Petrarca, you don't have that. You have to have different names. I mean, other than obviously personas and things like that. So
Yeah, you've got the one card. You've got the one grade 3 that says her name is Petralka in the deck. Like that's it.
yeah. So it's just kind of nice that you can just kind of say, hey, I like this piece because it's a counter charge, or hey, I'm going to play this piece because it searches for the one order that Cole finds every single time he plays
True.
the deck. The festival collection where it just
It gives a thing
boosts.
boost. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, just really good that he gets it, but every single time we play our pet decks, um, he pulls it. So
It's
um,
weird. I almost kind of wish this deck had the same thing going on that Chaos does. Like at least with like one more card. I would really like it if we had a one more card because like we keep getting these support cards and lyrical sets that help kind of fix your low roll. Like if you draw into Persona Red copies, or you have some in the drop zone or in your soul. There's like a couple cards we have now. Like we have one in the new lyrical set, I think, or it's like lyrical set 4, and then there's one in set 5 that I think was like revealed the other day that they like help you get Petralka's back from like drop her soul back into the deck so you can use her auto more reliably in later turns, and like that's cool, but it doesn't really do much if it's on a card you can only run one copy of. Really, I know that's like the point of the deck, but the high roll would be a little bit more funny if you could do it more than just one turn. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I don't disagree with that, but that's also kind of the fun of the let's go
Yeah,
gambling. Like, it's there, it exists, it's fun, and it's a pet deck, not a tournament deck.
it does
So
let you run the funniest stuff. Like I right now I've got some what's Chris Rain support in there. Like I've got her
oh
generic
yeah,
like her grade 2 that like if she attacks, if you have differently named units on your board, like she gives herself 5k or something else 5k, and at end of the turn return that to your hand, and like that's actually pretty cute. And then I have Chris Rain herself that I will ride from my hand after I've wasted all my copies of Petralka, because I'm gonna meet the requirements for her. I don't get the divine skill, and it'll be funny. So I don't know.
yep.
I think I've landed that in like one game, but they died before I could do my divine skill. So
I mean, I guess there's worse things.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, so it's a fun, goofy deck, and she's a cute little cat girl, so can't really complain too
that's true.
much.
She is a silly little cat. Okay,
Yeah.
on to our last one.
On to Vrygilla currently. So Vrygilla is one of those ones that it's really fun, and I'm very glad that they're coming out with a trial deck version of it here because it actually does need a lot of like personal support. Because it uses way too many resources in a turn. If you're playing its grade 2 order, which is just really good, keep in mind because of its power, the second skill on it doesn't make any sense. Um, because of it, your opponent doesn't interact in Vanguard during your turn, like with your board in standard at least. So there's not a lot that it goes on with. So that's always a weird thing, but it's a counterblast. To restand a unit when the Vanguard attacks, it's a counterblast. And if you want to call a card from drop, it's Energy Blast 3. So it's essentially to get an optimal turn, it's 2 CB and 3 EB. So it's fun. It's never great because once you're out of resources, you're kind of hooped because then it's just a 3 attack deck. But I'm having fun with it. It's giving me a lot of opportunity to try different things with it. And so like right now, I'm running all grade 2s in the deck. I'm not running any grade 1s because in the festival collection here that just came out recently, there's the new Duststorm Killing Field set order that just says choose a unit in your back row and give it boost. And Regula itself just wants to Energy Blast 3 to call a grade 2 from drop. So, well, first off, they're all interceptors, so you can get rid of them off your front of your board and be fine. The card that specifically searches for the order is a Soul Blast, which the deck doesn't do a whole lot of. So it's just a 10k. You put it in your back row, you add the boost, and then when it gets boost, it's a 15k boost in the back row. So decent numbers, and then you have your grade 2s in your front row. So you're attacking like 25k in every column. As a goofy thing, as if you have optimal, grade 2 setup or 28k on your Vanguard. But there's a lot of cards like Brachioforce, the Dragon Empire, Gun Cycler, a lot of things that you can throw in the deck that are good and work. So it's not a great deck because of its way heavy resource cost, but it's super fun.
Yeah, I think it's gonna get some pretty cool stuff up front. It's weird. I'm kind of mixed on this guy. I think he looks kind of goofy.
I love it.
I'm here for it. It's like Vanguard goofy, so it's fine. It's not like he does kind of look like a Yu-Gi-Oh card, if I'm being real, like a blue eyes white dragon. Looking at a dude, like it's just like fine. It's not a big deal. Like that's not really a mark against him. It's just like my personal aesthetic tastes. I think his like attack orders are cool. I will say that. They're like sideways too. I think it's something Vanguard doesn't do enough of.
No, for sure. And it's it's a normal order, so it's not like it's an order. I think it honestly would be better if it was a set order. Like if it was like spitballing, if it was like a set order that said counterblast to play this, and then during your turn, your front row gets plus 1k for every normal unit on board and drop. Like if that's what it was, and then it like stacked that 1k.
Actually,
because right now it's
cool.
That would be so good. Like I wouldn't say it would be so good. It would actually be fun though, because it would have some goofy numbers, and you could stack it up.
Yeah, like think about it. Like you're basically having you're setting these attacks or whatever that like basically give him more abilities in a way, because he himself is like super simple. He has like 2 one line of text abilities that like aren't bad. Like obviously like they give you a 4th attack and all that, but it's like stuff like that. If it was a set order, it'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's not the end of the world that it's a normal order. I mean, you can run the grade 1 order searcher, so you can guarantee it. It's just like I said, the biggest problem it has right now is it's resource heavy intensive. Varga already has a heavy resource deck in Counterblast, and Regula beats that every turn. So it's just kind of crazy. It's nice because in the new trial deck that's going to be coming out, there actually is a countercharger in it. So it's very good. It's very specific to this deck, which is good. Although, as a Dragon Empire player, I wish there was a generic countercharger that was better, rather than Ethan or the Gojo grade 1. But I think it's a good thing. I mean, we don't really need counter as much as I want to say we need it. We don't need it. Dragon Empire would be really, really dumb with it, I think. So it's good that it's gonna be locked to Regula. And it's just a grade 3, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah, I think the only other thing I don't like about his like deck, his like trial deck coming up, is they took the line of text they put on a lot of cards, which is, oh, if you have X or X Vanguard, do this or whatever. Like, they took that and they turned it into a keyword that feels like fairly Vergilla themed with the mate keyword. Especially the little symbol they chose for it looks very like Vanguard Skywrite-y. So like that in and of itself isn't a bad thing. Like giving it a keyword to like simply say like, oh, this is a 15k grade 2 that I think also has like 10k shield or something. And
Yeah.
You can only play it in this one deck. And like that's fine. I think it's actually really cool. But like it's because it's so cool that like I kind of wish that that was a keyword we had for a while and just used on things like, oh, well, what is it? The guy in Rezile that goes into Soul, you draw a card, and then you look at the top card of your deck, leave it on top or on the bottom. Instead of it just saying like, at the end of the battle it attacked, if you have a grade 3 or greater Rezile, it could say like mate Rezile, and then at the end of the battle it attack, do this. Like, there
Yeah.
you go. That'd be so easy. I don't know.
It feels like a altered variation of glitter in a sense, where
Yeah, yeah,
it's generic to the one nation,
that's
but
true.
once you're in the nation with the actual boss unit that it needs, then you do the
Mm-hmm.
other effects. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I'm hoping that it leads towards things down the line, like that's gonna have skill effects printed on cards coming up past the trial deck coming out. We'll see. I don't really know, but to kind of sum up, there's a lot of variation as a pretty much generic Dragon Empire deck with this one that you can toy with it and you can twist it and do a lot to it because there are a lot of common Dragon Empire cards that actually could just be all right in here. So it's worth toying and playing with. I like my version right now just because it's how often do you get to run all grade 2s unless you're running Lilfa or something like you don't get to do that a lot, so creates some interesting stuff.
Well, yeah. I think that'll wrap up this silly little thing. There's like a lot of decks I think that can be classified as a pet deck, considering there's so many decks in standard. Obviously, um, I think very quickly the one that I am glad I can say is like kind of not a pet deck anymore, just because of how good it actually is, was Prison, because um it was weird when that deck like came out. It was just like never good, and then when it got to its grade 4 it was good, but then it fell off pretty hard until it got the grade 1 that Superior Road into it, and then even then it wasn't like the best ever, and now it's got a restander, so like it had a lot of ups and downs with it. But the whole time I was like, man, I really like the character who plays this. I really like this deck, and I like how it forces people to play the game differently, so I'm glad that it's good. Like that kind of a thing, that kind of a like a relationship with a pet deck sort of.
Yeah, and I guess really to kind of summarize this is Vanguard has a lot of well, malleability, I guess, and the amount of decks that are good and bad and ugly and beautiful, and there's so many things that you could enjoy a deck, but it not be good. So as long as you are enjoying something, stick with it because a lot of these decks that we even talked about just today aren't expensive, but they're fun. They're not gonna, take you to worlds. They're not gonna maybe even win your locals. They could. You could sneak out wins with anything. I mean, luck is a skill in Vanguard, so if you have that, then you're good. But just have fun. Like play with some different combinations of things in some of these decks. I mean, even in some of your good decks, like there's so many different Rezile editions of decks, and some people like to build goofy versions. I mean, it is what it is. Enjoy the game. Enjoy playing it. Don't play it cookie cutter if you don't want to.
Yeah, that's true. There's so much you can do with the game, and I think that's why even now, with how like fairly aggressive our meta is, there's like a lot of silly stuff that can come out. Like I think very recently, a Levidroth was seen at a top table, and that's cool. But that's that can be a whole other thing. But for now, that'll be the end of this one. If you watched all the way through, thanks. If you liked this kind of topic, let us know what kind of pet decks you really enjoy, what deck like you super want to make work, and it just maybe it never does, or it only gets there sometimes, but for whatever reason, let us know down in the comments. And be sure to subscribe to the channel to keep up with all of our content, and ring the bell to make sure you are notified when stuff pops up. But until the next one, I was Cole.
And I was Trey.
We'll see you later.